You are an unutterably hideous polisson and a preposterous, heart-sickening, malodorous marinade of ooze and bile.
Ooh, that was very good. That was, there was some alliteration. We've rolled like Limp Bizkit before. It's not our first.
Yeah. I think everybody rolled like Limp Bizkit in the early 2000s.
Yeah, they did. And Limp Bizkit was very cool. Yeah,
In those days, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great how he's embraced the dad rock image.
Fred Durst.
Yeah, they released an album like last year, I think it was, very tongue in cheek. And it was totally embracing the whole like the image of him being an older guy, basically, and being not cool.
But they're still together, which I didn't know they released an album. I mean, I haven't listened to them since probably about fourth grade, or maybe every couple of years I'll put on Rollin', and reminisce a little bit, because I was very young when I listened to them. But you're saying that they're still together, which in my head just gives me a lot of respect for bands that can make it that long. Because that kind of tells you they're doing well as a business, right? They've got somebody who's. I mean, I think if you can go that long as a band, you're doing something right. So, good job, Fred Durst.
Absolutely, yeah. And it wasn't a bad album, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I remember listening to it. I don't remember anything from it. Like I don't remember any songs, or there was nothing that really stuck. But I enjoyed it. It kind of took me back a little.
Yeah.
And huge respect. Yeah. I agree with what you said. I think that staying together as a band is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very tricky.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've told you about my band, like my band experience.
Let's have a listen.
You know that you and I were in a band together at one point.
I am aware, yes.
Yeah. And before that and after that, you and I have played together as a band. Mm-hmm. And we were also in a trio together. You, me, and Konstantin on violin, right? Mm-hmm. So, but before all of that, before I even moved to Sofia, I was in a band and I played drums in that band. And we played post-rock. It was instrumental music, and it was a really great feeling. It was the only time in my life when I really felt like I was in a band. Like we were a very tight unit, and we were able to communicate without talking about it at all. Like we just go to the rehearsal space and just start playing, and we could almost sense what we were thinking. And also the kind of music, I think, was such that it really, it's like we just play for like an hour or something, and then like not speak but just be playing and totally in the moment, and feel like when it's right to slow down and make things quieter, and then when to blow up and reach a crescendo, and it was really magical. Yeah, it was very cool. But we broke up, of course.
How did you break up?
We broke up because there was tension that was building.
Was there a lady?
There was a lady.
I knew
actually.
It.
Yeah. There. Hey, how'd you know? There was actually, yeah, and it was thanks to her, I think, that we managed to stay together for as long as we did.
Oh, okay.
Because we were together for like 7 months, I think, and in that time we played a couple of gigs. And there was interest. Like we had actually started. People were talking about us in Plovdiv at the time, because the scene was very. It was very. There wasn't that much going on. There were a couple of bands that were sort of, like up and coming, and for a little while we were one of those bands. And the place where we'd rehearse, it was a bar. Actually, it was called Studio 52, I think, or Stage 51. That's what it was called.
Studio
interesting
52
thing
sounds like a better name, by the way, because it's Area 50. It's Area 51.
Area 51, yeah.
Oh, that works. Okay, Stage 51 works.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But the concept of this bar was that it would be it was a venue essentially. So bands would come and they would play gigs, right? And it had like it could house like 300 people, I think. So it was pretty, like, it was a big venue, right? And so the interesting thing was that they had concerts there, and they also had a stage with amps and instruments and mics and everything set up. And so during the day, bands would go and play there and rehearse. And at night, it would be like, bands would play shows, or they would have like DJs and stuff like that. And so we were approached by one of the managers, and he's like, "Hey, I've been listening to you guys rehearse, and you're pretty good. Would you like to play at one of our like annual gigs or whatever?" And it was a Halloween gig. I remember that was the first time we played live. But as I was saying about the lady in the band, she was a bass player, and she was really, really cool, like a very gracious, chill person. And thanks to her, we were able to keep things under control, I think. Because one of the guitarists and I, we kind of clashed on the basis of just personality, I think, personality-wise, like the way that we approached things. I was at the time, like my philosophy of it was that you had to just go and rehearse, like twice a week, and that things had to happen slowly but surely. In other words, we'd rehearse and then we'd play, and then we'd rehearse some more, and then we'd get some songs, and then we'd record those songs, and sort of like always be moving forward. And that guitarist, he had a different idea. He was all about feel, and like what he was feeling at that particular time. So for him, it was like, well, I don't feel like playing today. I don't want to play. And I'd be like, yeah, but we got to play because, it's like, we have to rehearse. And he's like, yeah, but I don't want to. And so there were clashes. And I think looking back at it, if I had been more understanding and more accepting, maybe we would have gone on. I can't say. But anyway, we kept clashing, he and I. And at one point, the female bassist was just like, no, this is too much for me. So she left abruptly. And then after she left, we tried finding a replacement for her, but it just wasn't the same. And we just stopped existing as a band. There was no like official formal kind of we're breaking up thing, but it just stopped being.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because I sometimes listen to some of the demos that we did from the rehearsal spaces, and it just sounds so raw and so emotional. And I remember what it was like, being behind the drums at that time. Just a little bit of sentimentality,
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice that you have those recordings as well, and that you guys did recordings. Also, I think that idea for having a bar that's also a rehearsal space is really, really good. Because they probably charged you to use it as a rehearsal space, right?
Oh yeah. They did, but it was like a symbolic fee. Like it was very little. It wasn't what people would normally charge.
Yeah.
From what I remember, it was a bit lower.
Because it sounds like it'd be something pretty cool for like the local daytime drinkers to go and like also have some form of something's going on that you can watch,
Yeah. People were able to come in and just hang out.
Yeah.
While bands were playing, so it was really good. It was really good for the town.
Yeah.
At the time, and unfortunately they closed it down, so it doesn't exist anymore. But at the time it was like an incubator, for the scene.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of bands like there's this one really big band that's currently still together, and they're from Plovdiv. They're called TDK. In English, that would be TDK, just like the cassette company, And they started at roughly the same time. Like I remember when they were starting, and it's just that venue was the way that a scene starts to exist. You know?
Yeah.
I think that you have to have venues that promote young bands and that encourage young bands, because otherwise you don't have a scene.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking about before we started, and I think this feeds into that, about the vault mentality of people like Prince, and similarly, like what you mentioned, having those recordings from that time and being able to go and listen to them. And I've been thinking a lot about how just recording your work and keeping a record of you in different stages can be, I mean, it can be useful for a lot of reasons, but also it can be useful as something that pushes you forward. Like what I've been doing this past year, since I started in stand-up, I've been trying to record as many of my gigs as possible, and it's so easy to like go back and be like, okay, this worked, why did it work, you know, and just watch it back. Or it also can just make you feel like you know, sometimes you can just imagine, you know, that you are going to get a lot better, and then it's like, it's nice knowing that, hey, then I can go back and be like, no, this is what I used to be like, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched this video about Prince, who famously was one of the most or had probably the most famous vault, because what he would do is he would record every day. He was in the studio every day. Even when he was doing concerts and tours, he would play a gig, he'd get up in the afternoon, go and he'd do a 3 or 4 hour sound check, but it wasn't a sound check. It was just him playing for 3 or 4 hours. Like you and I know, it's like a sound check usually it is like as short as possible. Like if you can do it in 5-10 minutes, that'd be great. You know, usually it can take a little bit more, but he would actually play like a full 3 or 4 hour thing, just because he's like, oh, we've got instruments, we're in a stadium, there's nobody here, let's just, you know, because he loved playing. And then he would go and have dinner, and then come back for the show when people are in, and then play like a 2-hour show. So his sound check was usually a lot longer than the show. And then he would go and record, you know, until the morning or whatever. And he would, what they said, because I listened to an interview with one of his sound engineers, and she said that like, it was about a song a day that they would finish. So he would come in with just some lyrics on paper, and by the end of the day, they'd have all instruments recorded, and it would be like, yep, this is done. Let's put it in the vault. And so he'd record, you know, hundreds of songs a year, and then just for the albums, there's like so many of them didn't actually reach. I mean, they're finished songs, but they were never released. So that's really interesting to me, and that's something that we talked about last time, about having like a daily practice and listening to about Prince's daily practice. And I think it's so cool that we're at a time where you can record everything, you know, like talking about video or sound or you know, it's so easy. All you need is your phone, really, if you want. And that's enough for you to have a record of that time. You know, you don't need any stone tablets or anything. You know,
sundials.
Yeah,
yeah. You can record anything, and you can preserve it too. Like you can keep it. You can put it on the cloud, and rest assured that it's there.
Yeah. Every once in a while, the other thing that I do, like lots of times I'll record myself at home just talking through like different stuff, and just for my stand-up. But also like sometimes I'll get song ideas, and like right now I'm not in a phase of my life where I'll actually pursue them, because I know that, you know, that takes up I've got a lot of other things, but every once in a while I get a song idea, and I just sing it into my phone, and I'm like, maybe one day I'll sell it to Ilko, you know, and Yeah.
Why haven't you told me that you get random song ideas?
Oh,
Send them over.
Yeah,
send them
I
over.
can send you some. I can send you. I'll send you one. I had a really good one a couple of weeks ago.
Send it over. Yeah, absolutely.
But also, the other thing is the way that when I have a song idea, I just turn the recorder on and I'll sing the same line for about 5 minutes. And like every couple of times I sing it, I'll change like a word in it, And then by the end of the 5 minutes, I'll have something which is like, which sounds a lot better than at the beginning, but then I don't want you to listen to the beginning, I don't want you to be like, I'm singing this song about wrinkles and cream or whatever, and then by the end of it, it's about loving the way that you look or whatever.
In the summer. Yeah, that's interesting. It's when I've recently been trying to explore stream of consciousness more than I used to in the past. And so whenever I'm recording something, I'm always recording stuff on my phone. I've got like about 500 voice recordings from the beginning of the year. So that's like a lot of recording just all the time. And I try to make it as free as possible. Like not thinking about words or anything, and I'll just try to let whatever it is come out. And then I liked what you said about repeating it, because the more you repeat something, I think the more you refine it. And like in repeating a certain musical line, I think the more you repeat it, you are instinctively editing it.
Yeah.
I remember a video with Noel Gallagher who talked about how they recorded Don't Look Back in Anger and Wonderwall and those songs, and he said that people don't realize how much editing went into them and how much he refined them before they went into the studio to record. And so what I like about using my phone to record is that I'm not inhibited by like, oh, okay, like this is what it has to be in the end. I'm always thinking of just trying to capture the moment.
Yeah.
And just trying to do a thing, capture a thing, and then repeat, and then see if something else will come out of that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like when you're mumbling, within that mumbling, there will be like a word that sort of stands out.
Yeah.
And then once you have one word, I'll see that as kind of like a theme, like that's a little motif, that word.
Yeah.
And then I'll try to like work around it and find perhaps similar words that go together with it in sound like terms, like in mumbling terms. And so for a long time it's just a mumbling mess, but it slowly starts to kind of clear up, and you can slowly start to notice like a theme, a main melody, and then certain sounds that make up words. And I think it's a fascinating process. It's really fun to do. It's still fun.
Yeah. It's great. And again, Prince, one of the things that he would do is he'd almost always take a first take, even if it's not as good, because it's the most raw and the most like the closest one to that first vision.
I was recently listening to Bernard Purdie, Bernard Purdie's interview with Rick Beato. Mm-hmm. And Bernard Purdie is famous for the Purdie Shuffle on drums.
Yeah.
He's a very famous session music, like a drum. He's a very famous session drummer, and he famously played for Steely Dan. And he was talking about their sessions and how they would be so clinical in their approach to recording music that they would hire 3 separate bands to record songs. So they'd have one song recorded with 3 separate bands.
Wow.
And the one that Bernard Purdie was in, he talked about how they do like hundreds of takes, like literally hundreds of takes. And in the end, they would usually go with like the second or third take.
Yeah.
Of his drumming. And funnily enough, he would tell them this from the start. Like he'd play the first take and he'd be like, okay, this is the one.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we're going to do 200 more.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, we'll do them, but that's the one that you're going to use. I'm telling you now.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, that was usually how it happened, you know?
Yeah.
Because like the first take is the first take. It's very fresh. It's very, it's, you know, sometimes it's like you nail it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And the energy's perfect.
Yeah. Well, that's something that there can be a really strong parallel drawn with stand up again, because, and this is something I encountered in a book called the New Comedy Bible. And it was
right.
talking.
You recommended that book.
I
to
have,
me.
And I think it's one of the. Well, for me, it's the best one that I've read about just how to technically go in and be like, you know, it just gives you a workflow that I think works really well, and that like kind of anybody can use and like start from there. But one of the things that it talks about is how, and I've felt this so strongly, how the first time you go up and do a joke, it can work really well. And then the second time you do that same joke, it can work not so well. And this happened so many times with me. And the reason for that, she says, is that like that first time, well, first of all, you know, you don't actually know what the reaction is. And no matter what, the second time you'll remember that reaction from the first time, and you'll kind of, like, one thing that I'll do is I'll put pauses where people laughed the first time and like give them some time. And then the second time I go up, there's no laugh where I'm anticipating and laughing. I'm like, why aren't you laughing? You're not following the script of this last audience, you know? But
laugh, damn you.
But then the other thing is, the first time you're doing it, you're also much more likely to be going through the joke in your head. So, or, you know, like imagining the thing that you're talking about. And then the second time you can, it's pretty easy for you to be like, okay, these are the words, right? And just kind of say the words. And it makes a huge difference. It does. But there's,
which one is better? Like which one do you prefer?
If you can imagine it with the audience and somehow make it so that, you know, there's a surprise for you as well. That's great. If you're just going through the words, I mean, it can work. And I mean, there's certain jokes or there's certain ways of writing where you don't really need much more than the words. One thing, I'm not sure if we may have talked about on the podcast before, but I'll really quickly go into it, is this interview I listened to with James Acaster, who's one of my favorite comedians. And he talks about how like there's 3 different little points of comedy that you can be that you can be good at. And one is writing, the other one is improv, and the third one is presentation.
Right.
He may have used different words for it, but basically he says you can be really, really, really good at writing, and you won't need the other 2. Right? You can just have the words that you've written are more than enough to get a reaction. You can do it completely deadpan. You don't need to worry about like the way that you present it. Or you can be really good at improv and just go in and talk to people, you know, and not actually have, you know, or have your written material to actually just be a theme or something, you know. And you're like, hey, have you heard about this? And then you're just kind of talking with the audience or to the audience. Yeah. Or you can lean into or so that's improv, or you can lean into presentation. So like the way that you actually talk is entertaining. You know, you have inflections in your voice. You go slow, then fast, and so on. And the idea is like you don't need all 3, but usually you'll get a mix of at least 2 of those things. So
yeah.
And I know that there's comedians like famously that would go and actually, who was it? I don't remember which comedian it was. But he would famously go on stage and read a joke. So he would have it in his hand, and that's like the worst way to do it because you lose so much of it when like you know that this guy didn't come up here, because a lot of what's great about stand-up is like you get lost. Like it feels like, oh, this guy is just making this up on the spot, which sometimes is the case, but and there's a lot of ways to do it. But when you go up and just read a joke, then if it gets a laugh, that comedian, who was a super famous comedian, I don't remember which one, that's when he would keep it, because he'd be like, I presented it in the worst possible way. That means that there's something here. Okay. And then I'm going to actually learn it, and then I'm going to actually like perform it, you know?
Right. But isn't that weird for the audience?
It
when
is.
He's reading the joke,
But
because it's like
he doesn't do that at a paid show. Like he does it at a free show where the audience is
okay.
like, you're getting more than enough.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
That's like getting that's like getting quality control at the highest level.
Yeah.
It's like you're getting quality control from people who are doing the thing.
Yeah.
Almost. I think that. No, actually, scratch that. Getting quality control from the people who are doing the thing is presenting it to fellow comedians.
Yeah. Well, at open mics, there's
But
also.
But in the absence of that, I think the second best thing is to present it to an audience, because they're the ones who will be listening to it either way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but also fellow comedians can have a little bit of an immunity to it, because like they'll be deconstructing whether they want to or not. They'll be like deconstructing, why did this work, or why did this not work, or do it,
Right.
Whilst presenting to an audience, I do think that is the highest thing, and I think it's so amazing that in comedy you get to do that, and that's like the practice is you go up in front of an audience and make it in front of an audience, like, and there's so many ways to do it. Like a lot of people would write, but Bill Burr, for instance, he, as far as I'm aware, or what I've heard about him is that. He would do all of his writing on stage. So he would go up on stage, talk about stuff, and then like polish that. But he wouldn't actually write anything down. He'd just go up, talk, and then polish them as he goes up on stage. So he'd do a lot of open mics without written material.
Wow.
And there are so many ways to do it, and I think in music it's weird that it's very rare that you'll go up and just kind of jam in front of an audience and then like write an album that way. I recently heard a musician talk about doing that. It was, I don't remember who it was. It was on the Pete Holmes podcast, and he was talking about, because he's so inspired by comedy, he's doing a couple of weekends, which is almost like a workshop where the band plays in front of an audience, but they're playing like stuff that they haven't rehearsed, or that they're trying to find what is going to be in their next album.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the audience might think you suck.
And that's what happens in open mics and in comedy in general. The audience thinks you suck, but then when you actually get paid to do it, you take the stuff that doesn't suck. And
right.
Richard Pryor famously, he would bomb really bad in open mics, but he'd say like, if I don't bomb here, I'm not going to do well in the show. Like, it's a necessary part of it, and I think a big part of it is you becoming okay with. Now, not too okay. I don't, because some people get super comfortable with it, and I've met a couple of those people that are just like, you know what? I don't have an ego. I'm gonna come up here, and I don't care what you think. And then it's like, oh, don't do that. Like try to make people laugh. Get
an ego.
Yeah,
it's good to have an ego.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I understand what you're talking about. Yeah. And I think that the reason that attitude doesn't work, the guy without an ego.
Yeah.
I think the reason it doesn't work is because it's an extreme. It's like taking it to the polar opposite. Like I may suck, but I'm not going to learn from my mistakes.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me. I think that you always have to be mindful of like whether or not you actually suck.
Yeah.
Or whether or not it was just like a thing. A spur of the moment, you were trying out new ideas, it happens.
Yeah.
But you have to learn from it,
Yeah.
And I say have to, but obviously it's not written in stone. But it's good to learn from your mistakes, I think, and it's good to be okay with failure. That's why I think that I think I've told you about this young comic that I heard a couple of times at open mics.
Yes.
Back when I was living in Sofia.
Yes.
And this guy was amazingly talented, like really, really talented. And he was the only person that night who used zero profanity
Yeah.
in his stand-up. Like that's a hard thing to do. You and I have talked about this a lot. You know, most people will lean into like the profanity, and they'll use it as a way to kind of like as an exclamation point in the set, or they'll use it as like what's it called? Not the catchphrase, but like the key moment.
Oh, the punchline.
Of a bit. Like they'll use it as a punchline sometimes.
Yeah.
And so with him there was none of that. It was like all thought, like he'd thought it through very well. But he stopped doing it because he got a hard time from the audience. There was one time when he got booed off stage because he was doing Harry Potter jokes. Like he was making Harry Potter references.
Yeah.
And the audience just didn't like that at that point. You know, in that particular time, the audience were like they were very thuggish, I'd say. There was lots of people who like looked like thugs and they acted like thugs.
Yeah.
And they just weren't interested in a guy talking about Harry Potter, you know? But unfortunately, I don't think he's done it since.
Yeah.
And I think that's a shame, you know, because again, he was super talented, like a natural talent. I saw him in his first ever appearance, and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. And then a couple of times later, I saw him again. And then, you know, that thing happened, and I hope he hasn't quit anyway, but...
Well, sometimes you do, but I just don't think... I think a lot of it is putting that line between you and your work, where, you know, and not caring, or not, it's not caring, but it's like not being harsh on the way that it's perceived. And the cool thing about stand-up is that you get more or less objective feedback. Like nobody is going to laugh or gonna force laugh, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
And so
that makes sense.
Your feedback is immediate, and I think that's what's amazing about it. And sometimes you just don't have, you know, it could be a lot of different things, but like one way I like looking at it is like you don't judge your work, or do your best not to judge your work. It's like for other people it's their job to judge your work. I don't remember who said that. Famous person said that. But the idea being like your job is to work on it and to make it, you know, to take it to a place where you consider it finished. Once you consider it finished, then other people will decide whether they like it or not. But it shouldn't affect you, and that's like so much easier said than done, right? Because it's normal for us to be affected by if somebody's like, hey, I think this thing that you worked on really hard is trash. It's easy for us to kind of feel like they're saying, I think you're trash.
Right. But also I'm not sure about what you said earlier about you know, I agree that when you get laughter, that's a sudden impulse.
Yeah.
You know, you can't force laughter. It's like when you're playing a song and the people react positively, it's not forced.
Yeah.
You know that they enjoyed it. But I think that the opposite of that can be very harsh, because if people don't enjoy it, or if people boo you off stage, like what happened with that guy, I think it's very easy to accept that they don't like you as a person.
Yeah.
Because I think that like when you're on stage, or when you're presenting whatever it is that you do, there is a border between the work and you as a person.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously. But I think that since we are emotional creatures, it's very easy to just disrupt that border.
Yeah.
And to stop making that separation on both sides. Like the audience, when they're booing, in a sense, it's not important whether or not they like you as a person, or whether or not they just don't like the material.
Mm.
They're booing, and that booing is
Intended to
focused.
hurt you.
It's focused on you. You know, it's like you hear it with your own ears.
Yeah.
And so it's like the thought process of, maybe that joke just wasn't. They didn't like that joke, or they didn't like the song, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to just connect it to like, they don't like me.
Yeah.
You know, they don't like me as a person because I'm what. And I think that, interestingly enough, people who don't use like nicknames, or, you know, it's like when you're out there with your own name, I think that can make it easier to break up that border.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like when someone doesn't like, you know, something that Ilko Birov did, you know, it's like, I'm the person that they don't like me. They don't know me, maybe. They've just heard the thing, but they don't like the thing. It's like, it immediately equates to they don't like me. If that makes sense.
That makes sense, and it makes sense why it would affect you, because it's because we are social creatures, right? And a big part of that is being accepted in a community, in a society, and so on. And you don't want enemies. Or
no,
it is one of the most hurtful things can be when somebody doesn't like you, or when you know that you're not liked.
However, I think that certain musical geniuses, I think that they're very comfortable in that space of not being liked.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a couple of podcasts ago, you and I talked about Marilyn Manson and the album Antichrist Superstar.
Yeah.
Now, when that album came out, he was very disliked by like the media, and not socially, I think, ever, but like just the media, the way they were presenting him, and from interviews that I've watched, it seems like he was okay with that. You know, it seems like he was always above whatever people were saying, and not only was he above that, but he saw it as like a marketing tool.
Yeah. Because,
you know, the albums were selling like a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so so I've thought about that. How there are people who are very comfortable with not being liked.
Yeah.
And especially since I started using Twitter, I've been seeing a lot of that. You know, there are people who will post things that they know will get others riled up.
Yeah.
And they're comfortable in that space, you know? It's like they thrive, interestingly enough. And I think that's an interesting mindset.
Yeah, and it's odd also, because a lot of times I think the reason why some people are so driven towards the arts can be so that they're liked, because you see somebody like, you know, a celebrity or something like that, and you obviously they're liked by a lot of people, if you know, because and I think that's one of the things that really takes you or makes you want to be that, just as a kid or whenever, is that status thing of you know, people are talking about this guy without even knowing him, and they're talking very often positive things, you know.
Interestingly enough, I think that the content that you're creating, you know, you and I have talked before about how these days everything is content, right? But when someone is creating something, it's not actually content. It's a thing. It's a work of art. You know, it's a work of self-expression. And I think that whenever you're expressing yourself, no matter how it's done, if people can resonate with it, or if it resonates with other people, then there will be a sense of camaraderie. There will be a sense of like, I like this thing. And I think that then the next step is to have a personality that will cause some discussion. In other words, you can like that person, or you can not, like, you can dislike that person, but if they're an interesting person, if they're an interesting personality, I think that creates discussion, and that creates buzz, and that creates like people talking about it.
Yeah.
And this year marks the 30th anniversary. This year marks the 30th anniversary of several interesting albums. This year marks the 30th anniversary of Korn's debut album. Korn, the self-titled album.
With a K, right? Yes.
That's right. And a backwards R. Capital. But they were a band who created an enormous amount of buzz when they were starting out. Like before they even put out their first record or like their first demos, there were hordes of people outside their recording space listening in, because that's how great of an impact they had. And can you imagine? I don't know if you've ever been a Korn fan. Have you been a fan of the Korn?
I wouldn't say fan. I mean, I've enjoyed what I have listened to, but I don't remember ever listening through like a whole album. I've listened to a lot of their songs.
Okay. Well, their first album starts with the song "Blind," right, which is one of their most iconic songs. That's the first song of the first album, you know, and like this came out in 1994. So imagine like 1994, that's like grunge, you know, everything is grunge, you know. You open up a magazine, it's grunge. You know, turn the TV on, like everybody looks like, you know, Kurt Cobain wannabe.
Yeah.
Basically. And then you hear Korn. Right, and then you hear Blind. Okay. And it's outstanding. You know, it was dubbed nu metal, but I don't think you can really categorize it that way, you know, because it's very different from all the other nu metal that was going on. You know, it happened a little later. So Korn are like a singular band in terms of the sound. The sound is like this. It sounds like nothing else, in my opinion. And my point is that they were very interesting as a group, you know, like as a unit. They were very mysterious. But at the same time, what they were doing was like amazingly good.
Yeah.
And it was super interesting, and people loved what they were doing. And they also liked what they were, like the way they presented, the way they looked, their style and everything. And you can say the same for Marilyn Manson in the 90s. The music that band was putting out was top notch.
Yeah.
It was produced by Trent Reznor, you know, the first two albums especially. But just the thing is, like the music was really good, and they were controversial because they painted their faces and whatnot, and they had like satanic imagery. So it was edgy, but the thing they were doing was good.
Yeah.
That's what folks were drawn into, I think.
Yeah. I think a big part of, I think one of the things that you can learn, or that helps you grow a lot, is not being offended by criticism, or like you mentioned about Norm Macdonald shaking people's hands after bombing, or recently I watched about him he did a very profane show where there was like kids in the audience, so it was like,
that was the one.
Was that the
same one?
Okay.
That was the one, yeah, where he was shaking people's hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or famously Bill Burr's the show that made Bill Burr famous, and we listened to this together. I remember.
That's right. In the car.
Yeah. is when he actually just decided, you know what, instead of telling jokes and stuff, I'm gonna the crowd is being mean and I'm not gonna take it. I'm just gonna you know.
He went off on them.
Yeah. And then at that time, that was the right choice. I can see a lot of context where that would have been the wrong choice. But either way, he didn't care that, he wasn't trying to suck up to them. He was like, if these guys don't like me, well, I don't like you back.
That's right. Yeah. But at the same time, listening to that show, I think that he was never being like the hostility was it was a warm hostility.
It was, yeah.
If that makes sense. I mean, it's like, I think you can be mean to a person with style.
Yeah.
And you can be you can be mean in such a way as to. Okay, I want to read something.
Yeah.
I've recently been active in a Discord server for fan fiction,
Okay.
and they have a thing called bot. They have a thing called bot spam.
Okay.
Bot spam, right?
Sure.
Where when you type something, the bot will give you a response. So I've just typed insult. You are an unutterably hideous person. No, you are an unutterably hideous polisson and a preposterous, heart-sickening, malodorous marinade of ooze and bile.
Ooh, that was very good. That was there was
I
some
know, right?
alliteration.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It was said with style.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So my point was that like if you if you dunk on someone in such a way that they go, wow.
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it was that he had a smile on his face, and I think that's, or at least you can hear that because it's only audio recording, I think. Or maybe there's a video one, but you can hear that he has a smile on his face while he was doing it. And I think that's also part of a good little trick that that can help you out with comedy is smile, you know. And like you know, even that can actually boost it so much because you know it does help a lot. And him saying, because he said some awful things, I think there was
he did yeah
just thinking about it, I think he may have mentioned that he wants that state to get cancer.
he did he did.
I think he mentioned at least 2 types of bodily fluids.
Certain acts that he wanted. Yeah. There was but I think that there was a level of understanding, I think, between him and the audience, because they were liking it.
Yeah,
you know, that was the point where they realized that, you know, that this guy's really good.
Yeah.
And so I think it boils down to like being able to react in the moment.
Yeah.
And being witty too, because like the stuff he was saying was very witty, and I think it was quick-witted.
Yeah.
You know, because I think again, dunking on a person really depends on like where, like if you are able to remove yourself from the situation, come up with a good dunk, bring yourself back, and then just, you know, let it fly in a way that makes people be amazed at your verbal skills. You know, I think that's. I think people enjoy it.
Well, another thing that you can do is just tell the truth. And a lot of it was like, you know, right now, this is not a good audience, you know, and he's telling them that they're not a good audience.
Right.
He's exaggerating it sometimes.
Of course. Yeah. But remember that the court jester was the figure who would always tell the truth.
Yeah.
That was the interesting thing about the court jester.
Yeah.
That like he would tell the truth, but he'd present it in a humorous way. And so he was the only one who was allowed to do that, because anyone else who dared to tell the truth, they could just get killed or exiled or, you know, or ostracized or something, or sent to like the other town.
Yeah.
But like the jester was the one who was able to, through comedy, through the guise of like telling jokes, he was able to say truthful things.
Yeah.
So when Bill Burr was dunking on that, you know, the whole audience, he was a kind of jester-like figure.
Yeah.
Because he was in the realm of comedy. You know, it's important to I think to recognize that he wasn't being openly hostile. Like he wasn't coming from a bad place.
Yeah. But
so
it almost felt like a superpower. Because imagine like a musician coming on. Like, would they be able to handle a crowd like that? I mean, or how would they? You know.
That's a good question. I think it depends. I think it just depends on your state of mind. I've seen videos of like 90s of like Guns N' Roses in the 90s, and Axl Rose would walk off stage because people were booing.
Yeah, but that feels like he's running away, whilst Bill Burr is standing there and taking it. Like
Yeah.
he's fighting it. He's not like, oh, I'm too big for this. No, he's like, I've been paid to do this 10 minutes. I'm doing this 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think it depends on the state of mind that you're in.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think musicians can have slightly more inflated egos, and they can think that like, well, you're supposed to be here for me, so you're supposed to adore me.
Yeah.
And anything less, and screw you guys, I'm going home.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. But I think the better thing to do is just take it with a smile, and perhaps do something unexpected. Maybe play a new song or something, or jam something out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, I say this and yet remember you and I played a gig in the Irish pub, and there were these two guys who were bad mouthing us the whole time. Remember that?
No, not at all.
I remember that. I was looking at the guy. I was looking at one of the guys.
You remember his face?
I was giving him his eye. I was giving him the eye, It felt bad, because I think they were coming from a bad place. And they were also threatening violence.
Okay.
So it's like they were talking about like, oh, if these guys keep on sucking for like 2 more songs, I'm gonna throw my bottle at them or something. It was something like that.
I don't remember.
I recall hearing.
Wow.
And then what happened that night was the electricity went out.
Okay.
And so it was like pitch black. And then you and I kept on playing, I think, and people liked that. I think they felt good that we sort of didn't just stop and get off stage, but we continued. And even though it was quieter, we kept on playing. And then after the lights came back on, I think the badmouthers changed their stance.
Huh.
And I think one of them was like, hey, these guys are sounding better now.
Wow.
Because like there's electricity, right? And sounding better than before. So,
yeah. Huh.
But yeah, I remember that. It's certainly unpleasant to be playing and to hear someone saying, "Oh, this guy sucks."
It's interesting. Most people that don't go on stage or that type of stage, they don't realize how much you actually hear while you're on stage. And even while doing like stand-up, where you're actively talking, like you think that the person is just hearing his own thing, but I have heard things like said at the back of the room while I'm talking through a bit. Yeah.
Wow.
And sometimes I'll even address it and be like, and if I mention the exact thing that they're talking about, it's like, oh, like, how did you hear that? I've had that happen a couple of times with stand-up, people being like, how did you hear that? But that's happened as well. Like when you play, you can hear people's conversations sometimes. Like,
absolutely.
If you want to, especially like if you're like, hey, did that guy just mention my name?
Yeah. It can really throw you off sometimes. I think I was recently listening to a Bob Dylan did a concert recently. It was like a couple of weeks ago, and some lady in the crowd shouted, "Play something we know."
Yeah.
And then he played When I Paint My Masterpiece to the melody of Putting on the Ritz.
Uh-huh.
And it was great. It was very unexpected, and the crowd loved it. And yeah, I just think there are many ways that you can turn it around.
Yeah.
You can either choose to address the person, or you can just choose to do your own thing, or not address it at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting topic, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's lots of ways to react. I think the way what I don't like is when people react in a way that's like, I think the proper way to react is like never punch harder, because you already have the upper hand because you have a microphone, and if you've been doing what you've been doing properly, you've been giving the audience dopamine hits, so they're on your side just from you. Them having enjoyed the thing that you played, or the thing that you said or whatever, or they're also on your side just because you're high status at that moment. Even if even if you are low status in appearance or whatever, you're high status because you're holding the mic or because you're in that spot. And what I think is a mistake is you, as somebody who's high status, to go harder at someone else than they went at you. So like if somebody says, play something we all know, you don't say, hey, you piece of,
right.
Well, why don't you grab an instrument, or whatever. Yeah. You don't do that. You can be like, there's a lot of things you can say. Just don't punch down is a good rule to follow.
Yeah. People who have lots of followers online, I think they're in a position now where they have a certain power, where whatever they say, it will get
amplified.
It will get amplified, and it will get criticized by lots of people, but it will also kind of be, it will be taken to be the truth by those who follow them and agree with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting, and at the same time, it's a bit dystopian and scary.
Yeah.
Because someone like Mr. Beast, for example, like he recently asked, should I run for president?
Wow.
And he got like a million replies or something, it was something like that, like on that scale,
Yeah.
And I don't know, but like someone like him, like just because he's very rich and like big on YouTube, I'm not sure that he should be president. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you know what he can do? He could probably host the actual election, make a game around it, right? And
make it like Squid Game, like a Squid Game type.
Yeah.
thing.
Whoever can last the longest in this tub full of pythons, it will be our next U.S. president, and I will give them $10,000, all in pennies.
I'll give $10,000 to everyone who votes. Yeah, someday, man, someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of a good premise. Good premise. Yeah. That'd be good. I would like. I feel like we can have more entertainment in the elections. Make it like America's top ninja warrior.
Yeah. There you go. America's next president.
Yeah, America's next president.
There you go.
Nice obstacle course.
Or like a controversy session.
Could be, yeah.
Like who can make the most people angry?
Yeah, there could be they could have like a fake. Like they could get like different headlines that are like fake headlines, but written by like copyright people, and have the president need to immediately address it. So like it'll be like huge riot in Pennsylvania.
What do you do
because of this? And then they need to immediately do like a 5-minute speech on it or something.
Wow. That would be interesting, to be honest.
It would.
I think that'd be interesting. That would really show the speed of their wit.
Yeah.
It would show how adaptive they are.
Yeah.
I think this is a good time to wind it down.